I've been debating on making this video for a while now. Generally, I try to avoid super controversial topics because on the internet, that's going to be wild. But at the same time, it's something I've thought a lot about, especially in this year. It's always kind of been on the back of my mind. Which do I prefer? Or not really which do I prefer, because I know which I prefer, but why I prefer vintage Lego to modern Lego. And I do have a lot of reasons. And again, this is just my opinion. Obviously, this is not fact, so please don't take it super harsh. And in no way am I saying I don't like current Lego, because obviously I still buy it. And if I didn't like it, I wouldn't buy it. So, do still like current Lego, but this is just the reasons I prefer vintage over current. And then kind of some of the usual arguments I get in rebuttal. These are going to be some, I guess, further explanations that I usually don't go into like the comment section of a post or whatever. So my feeling with a lot of current Lego is that it is intended to be built once and then played with or put on display, especially if it's, I don't know what the current breakdown for age groups for Lego is. I know definitely there's the 18 plus. I feel like there's still like a 16 plus and maybe like a 12 plus, but definitely like the 16 and 18. It feels like those sets are only designed to be built once and then displayed and not taken back apart. Since I fall into that category, since I am an adult, I don't care for that. Lego collecting, generally people don't buy like 3 or 4 sets and then they're done forever. Generally, people buy and continue to buy over the course of their life. So I feel like it does a disservice to the toy to make it where it's not easy to take back apart and rebuild, because in all likelihood you're not going to have space to display all of your sets all of the time, and they're usually not stable enough to try and store built. Some of them are, but definitely not all of them. And we all know that dust is a thing, so it makes it really hard to fully clean a set if you have a hard time taking it apart and then want to put it back together. I felt like growing up, the whole point of Lego was to build and rebuild. Personally, I'm a by the instructions kind of builder. So if it's only intended to be built once, I don't know, it loses something for me. Along a similar line, the sets have massive piece counts now. I mean, even small sets, like everything is monstrous piece counts. So what I remember from the late 90s and early 2000s when I was growing up was you could still get large sets but with lower piece counts. So like a 600 piece set would have been massive around that time. A 600 piece set today is like mid-range, probably on the lower end. With that being said, 600 pieces is also a set that's like this size. Because all of the pieces they're using are 1x1 plates and tiles and little bitty pieces that don't take up much space. You spend hours and hours building to end up with a very small set. I just recently rebuilt the Pharaoh's Forbidden Ruins. That set is just over 600 pieces, and that set is enormous. Of course, it is a base plate set. Something else I entirely miss about current Lego is there are no base plate sets, and base plates, they've been saying they're phasing those out for a long time now. Don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but I keep stockpiling the remaining colors they have available for whenever that happens, because I love base plates. But like I was saying, using the example of the Pharaoh's Forbidden Ruins, that set is enormous, but it does not take all day to build it because it's only 600 some pieces. So stylistically, much prefer that. I would like larger pieces that take up more space. I'd rather have a lower piece count for a larger set. Arranging tiny tiles is like the most boring thing in the entire world. I do not find that enjoyable at all. And a lot of times it discourages me from wanting to build really stuff in the last 5 years, especially. It just seems like it's gotten out of control. So I know, like I said earlier, there are age ranges for a lot of the sets, but it feels like it's getting more and more that the sets are not intended for play. They feel like they're more made for display now. Like, I am very drawn to the sets that are intended for ages, it's like the 4 and up, the youngest age range of sets, because they feel the most like classic Lego to me. Stylistically, I also love that they don't use stickers. The majority of the sets I've bought in the last 10 years have been geared towards the younger demographic because they still make great displays. So even though I'm not playing with them, they still look really nice. Like if you want to display a set, they're still really nice, but they feel like a little more like classic 80s, 90s, early 2000s Lego. But all of those sets are incredibly small. It's like they're not making large sets for children in the 4-up age group. At least not that I'm seeing, unless I'm missing it, which is always possible. And they don't make a lot of them either. So it's not like, you know, if it's a $10 or $20 set and they're putting out, you know, a few a year, I'd like to get a little bit more than that. And I feel bad for smaller children that have way less options. It seems like Lego is catered a lot more towards, I would say, 12 and up. I don't know. It just kind of bums me out because I felt like I had tons of options when I was a kid. Tons of options for smaller sets and tons of options for cheaper sets. So like in the Lego catalog, there would usually be like a centerfold that had all these sets that were $10 and below. Now you're lucky if there is one set per wave, per theme, that's $10. And that's like the absolute minimum. Most of the time now they're moving towards like $12, $13, $15, $16. Just not affordable. I remember going to KB Toys and they would have 3 for $10 on those little shell promotional sets. The cheapest thing you can get now are the collectible minifigures, and that's literally a minifigure, a couple of accessories, and that's $5. People consistently want to argue that Lego has always been expensive, and that's just simply not true. As someone who grew up with Lego in the 90s and early 2000s, obviously there have always been higher end sets, but the range and availability of smaller sets that were much more affordable was so much. Like you would have one set per wave that was probably the most expensive one. It'd be like $75 to $100. On a very rare occasion, you might see something that's like $150, but they were putting out maybe a couple of those per year. Now I feel like you're getting several sets per wave that are $100 plus. I mean, we're talking about getting a Death Star that is $1,000. And whenever I talk about price, people worldwide will argue, well, in this country it's this, in this country it's that. I cannot speak for individual countries. I can only speak on what I'm witnessing in America. So I'm sorry for whatever you're going through, Lego-wise, price-wise, wherever you live. The only thing I can speak on is what I'm witnessing in America. You also have to go with average income, what the conversion rate is. There are a lot of factors. So I'm not really going to argue price points with you based on which country you live in. We all have our own stuff to deal with. Definitely more affordable when I was younger. I had an allowance of $1 a week and I could afford to buy Lego sets. So it's not like I was being given hundreds of dollars a month to spend on toys. If at $1 a week, I could still afford to buy Lego sets, I'm going to say they were affordable. I also miss the way they used to put out Lego, which was much smaller waves and fewer per year. Now, I don't have the drive to buy sets anymore because I'm like, well, they're just going to put out 300 new sets next year. So I don't feel like I need to get every set. I'm by no means saying I need to get every set, but there's just too many options. I mean, I look at the sets behind me. For the vintage ones I have right here. Unitron, they only ever made 4 sets for that theme. Mtron, less than 10, I think. Blacktron 1, pretty sure was like 6 or something like that. I miss when they would do those small series, those small waves of unique themes and unique series, and it wasn't just like overwhelming. In fact, for all of these, I wish they had made more. And I live by that kind of lifestyle where I'd rather want more than be overwhelmed by options. I just don't think we were meant to live with this many options. I don't have a ton of problem with licensed themes. I'm not a huge fan of licensed themes. I liked when it used to just be, it was Harry Potter and Star Wars. You know, those were the licensed themes. They also didn't overdo it with them. Again, they just put out small waves every year and it was exciting. Now when you have hundreds of sets released a year, there's no real drive or excitement for them because you're just like, well, we'll either get a remake of that in a couple years or things start to all look very similar. It feels forced. Again, just not a huge fan. I wish there was more focus on non-licensed themes. You know, we haven't really had Castle or Pirates in years unless they put them in with like creator sets, which again, I'm not a huge fan of creator sets. I want like their own unique themes the way they used to be. instead of just kind of being lumped in with city or creator, kind of like what they did when they brought Johnny Thunder back, but it was under city sets. Another thing I'm not a huge fan of is the way instruction manuals are done today. I think I've mentioned this before, but like I have, the original Yellow Castle. I don't know how many hundreds of pieces that set is. Hundreds of pieces. And the instruction manual for that set is only like 13, I think it's like 13 sections long. If that set was released today, that instruction manual would be 100 pages long. I don't know why it's gotten so outrageous that we're like only adding a couple of pieces per page. I am sick of doing this every 7 seconds to build a set. In some cases, I do skip pages because I'm like, this is unbelievable that we've gotten to the point that we have to be told, sometimes a single piece per page. And I'm not talking about the 4 and up sets, because I get that to an extent, that you're trying to help little kids be able to build Lego sets, but I used to be a little kid building Lego sets. It was not that hard to need to put a single piece per page. I just think there should be like a happy medium. I'm not saying it needs to be the way the Yellow Castle was, where you were probably putting like 40 pieces on per little section. It was crazy. They do an entire loop around the castle in one section. But again, I think we could do something where it's in between. Some people have said in rebuttal to me talking about this in previous videos or posts that the reason I feel this way is because I started getting Lego in like the late 90s and early 2000s. But my love of Lego is actually for the 80s to the early 90s. I did enjoy Lego sets in the late 90s and early 2000s, but the sets I love the most came out before I was either born or I was too young to start buying or building Lego sets. So that's really not accurate at all, most of which I didn't even get until adulthood. So again, that's not really an accurate statement that I would have love and nostalgia for something that I never grew up with. Something else a lot of people say is that, Lego almost went bankrupt in the 90s. I think it was the 90s. And that, they're just like booming now. So now has got to be better. I always think of this as like comparing One Direction to the Backstreet Boys. The internet, the way it exists today, did not exist in the 90s, 80s, pre-Y2K. So you can't compare the level of advertising you're able to do today to what you were able to do back then. I don't ever remember seeing a single advertisement for Lego when I was a child. And I was big into TV. Today you have things like LAN, you have Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, you have all of these resources you can literally use for free to advertise any product you want. I mean, LAN's not free. They have to send Lego sets or whatever, but strictly based on just social media alone, it's really hard to compare whatever's happening in the current era to what was happening in the 80s and 90s. So at the point that Lego was on the verge of bankruptcy, they definitely didn't have the tools and resources to advertise their products the way they do today. If you took sets from that era and released them today identically, I would love to know how they would go over, because it's just a different time with totally different resources. Again, these are all just my opinions, which I am entitled to. I will still be buying new Lego sets. I just don't buy them the way I used to. And I'm at the point where I just feel like I love the style so much more vintage sets that I will be investing any of my additional free money more so into vintage sets rather than current and new releases. Anytime they do anything that references an old set, I get very excited. Definitely buy those. The Galaxy Explorer, the recent Blacktron 1 set, the Renegade, I just got that one, haven't built it yet. So I'm sure you all will have some very strong opinions. I do moderate pretty hard in my comment section, so if anything comes across as inherently rude, I do delete those. But I just thought it would be fun to share in a longer form video why I love vintage so much more, because I do get questions about it pretty frequently, and it's really hard to answer, a sentence or two in the comment section. So thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and it didn't make your blood boil too much, and I will see you all next time.